So we're actually going to be hopping into the news here. Not too much news this week. A couple of interesting stories, however. By way of Polygon, Julie Alexander writes, Netflix is working on a Castlevania series. For me, I think this is super cool. I'll get into the story shortly, but I'm not a huge Castlevania guy, but to me, these are steps in the right direction for what I personally want made. So if they're starting with Castlevania, that's awesome. Netflix is working on a new original series based on Konami's Castlevania franchise, the company announced today. The news is buried within a press release sent out after an event for the network's upcoming slate of new series, which was held in New York City. Although Netflix didn't announce who would executive produce the Castlevania series, Adi Shankar is set to produce. He's from Dread, if you're not familiar, and this was confirmed on Facebook that he would be co-running the series. The first part of the first season is expected to be released this year. Acclaimed writer Warren Ellis, who did Trans-Metropolitan Iron Man, which I'm not familiar with, has reportedly written the first season. So people are excited about that because he's a good writer. Yeah, this is huge. I don't know if any of you guys are big Castlevania guys, but this is an animated series that Netflix is willing to pull the trigger on and put money into. It's a video game series, which I think is cool. Does this get you excited from a Castlevania fan perspective, or maybe just the future of video game media?
I didn't know it was animated because they were saying it was going to be super R-rated Game of Thrones style, so I was surprised.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Logan, do you have any ties to Castlevania, or does this Netflix announcement make you excited at all?
I'm excited to see what they do with it, honestly, just purely from the standpoint of kind of like you said, it could be good for video games going forward and with other franchises besides Castlevania. I'm not really I wouldn't call myself a Castlevania fan per se. I have played Symphony of the Night, and I think that's one of the best games probably ever. I played it for the first time, I think 2 years ago, and it was incredible to me how much it still held up. But yeah, I wouldn't call myself a fan of the series or anything, so I don't really have any attachments to the lore, and if it is going to be directly tied to the characters in the video games and stuff like that, then I'll have no idea what's going on. But I think the world and the character design and the world design of Castlevania is really iconic and really cool, and it's one of the more unique standout games and probably video game history purely from an aesthetic standpoint. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see if they do anything else with it going forward, especially since I think it's kind of important to note that Castlevania is kind of dead. Konami is not doing anything with that property. So for them to obviously give over the rights to Netflix or whoever in some way to greenlight this show is really intriguing, and I'm wondering what's going on over there at Konami.
That was my observation, that maybe this means that they have something in the pipeline for a game coming up in the series to just kind of remind everyone, this is Castlevania, this exists. We want to get this back out there before they put a game out or something. But then it also kind of reminds me of, if you guys remember, a while back there was supposed to be a
Zelda?
live-action Zelda Netflix series, and that, thank God, never came to fruition. I can't imagine it would have been. It probably would have just ruined my childhood. Or maybe it would have surprised me and been good, but I'm a lot like Logan. I bought Symphony of the Night. Haven't played it for more than a few hours yet, so I have no serious connection to the series. But it could be good for just video game series in general, I guess. I think this is there's more opportunity for success here than a video game movie, as we've seen with Assassin's Creed and Ratchet and Clank and so on. So this could be cool going forward. Especially from the Netflix style approach. Netflix seems to be all over this, kind of just funding shows and producing shows that might not have existed otherwise. So,
well, the interesting thing too is they're at a point where they have all of this money that they can invest in things, and they're just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. This reminds me a lot of DC and Warner Brothers in a sense of the movies aren't really hitting well. But DC animated movies are always so well done. Obviously there's a few misses, but a lot of them are really well done. And I think it's
Justice League Dark.
I think it's easier to make a better animated movie than it is a live action. And I'm excited for this to be the future of video games and other media moving forward, as opposed to the big Assassin's Creeds and stuff like that, which there's a place for those, but I like this because there's quicker turnaround in these, meaning that you'll have with a TV show as opposed to a movie, you're not strained for filling in all this lore into an hour and a half, right? You have multiple episodes there's some filler episodes, which if you're a fan of a video game, you're cool with filler because you just want to see more of that world. So I'm excited for where this takes video games next. Even if you're not a fan of Castlevania, when this comes out, you should at least put the numbers up there for Netflix and at least click on it to watch it, just because if they see the numbers jump for this opens the floodgate for a lot of other properties you might be interested in. So definitely look out for that, because it's going to be interesting where this takes Netflix with video games. So
I'm curious if Netflix approached, I would assume they'd have to approach Konami in regards to like getting their hands on this franchise. I'm curious if Netflix approached them or if Konami approached Netflix, because if Netflix is the one going to game developers, then I think we're right, and this could be indicative of something bigger going forward for video games potentially being TV shows or movies or whatever directly on Netflix. So I'm curious what that relationship has been like. The other good thing I will say about a TV show is I think it makes writers less beholden to copy straight from the source material and maybe instead do something a little bit looser and a little bit more of their own. I think so many times the reason video game movies suck is they feel like they have to copy the exact story from the video game and put that on the big screen, and that doesn't translate well a lot of times. But I think TV shows, there's a lot more wiggle room to kind of do your own thing, and I'm hoping that's the case with this.
Well, I think you have a pretty solid point there, because in an interview I read with Shigeru Miyamoto about the Super Mario Brothers movie, I don't know why I stumbled upon this article on the internet, I just did. He was interviewed and he was asked what he felt about the movie. He said he didn't like it. Obviously, who would like that movie? It's a terrible movie. But they asked him why he thinks the movie was so bad, and his reasoning was that it was too closely tied to the video games. He said it didn't try to be its own thing; it tried to be a video game movie and not a movie based on a video game, if that makes sense. And he just felt that they could have taken it in its own direction, made it its own unique thing, and they focused too much on making it like the video game. That's why it failed. So that's straight from the creator's mouth. So it's an interesting take on that. So.
And that's the one good thing I have heard about the Assassin's Creed movie, is that they didn't try to like some people were frustrated with how the Animus worked in that movie, and that it wasn't Desmond and Altair and like all this different stuff. But I've also heard people on the flip side like credit Ubisoft and whatever film company it was that made that movie. I've heard a lot of people giving them credit for not feeling like they need to include all that stuff, because it really is like you do back yourself into a corner, especially from a writer's perspective out of the gate. Like, okay, I'm going to write a movie, but it has to involve this, and this, and that's really hard to do. So yeah, I don't know.
And there's a difference between staying true to the source material and being the source material. So you have to walk that fine line. I'm gonna put this as hashtag Jared was correct. No way related to another famous hashtag about somebody being correct about something. This comes away of GameSpot. Eddie writes, South Park: The Fractured But Whole delayed as Ubisoft teases very strong Nintendo Switch games. The first part of this article just talks about them and their approach to the Nintendo Switch and games coming out for it. That's not too interesting because there's not a lot of details there. One big portion of this article that's interesting is Yves Guillemot added during the call that Ubisoft won't release many new IP going forward and will instead focus on growing its existing brands, meaning we're probably going to just get sequels to things, and we probably won't see a Division again, right? Though Division's Tom Clancy, so I don't know if that's technically considered new IP. But the other part of the story... The other part of the story is, as part of its newest earnings report, Ubisoft announced that South Park: The Fractured But Whole has been delayed again. It is now slated to arrive sometime during Ubisoft's fiscal 2017-28 year, which translates between April 2017 and March 2018. So we could easily see this game pushed to next spring, which is huge because this game was originally slated for December 2016. This is huge. This isn't surprising. Anybody familiar with the South Park games knows that the first one was in tremendous turmoil. The creators of South Park are very detail oriented, and they wanted the game to reflect South Park as much as possible, and that game got delayed multiple times, and people were really excited this game was coming out this spring, and I said over and over again I wouldn't be surprised if it got delayed, and it did get delayed. The problem I have, and I want to hear your guys' opinions on this. So this is delayed, and the earliest it can come out is April, which I doubt it'll hit. You're thinking more fall, winter. I even think it's going to miss that, because if this game were to come out in the fall, winter, we see how games that aren't these major games and franchises do in the fall when they're up against the likes of these big boys like Call of Duty and Destiny 2, which we'll talk about next. and I don't know if them having it in the fall or winter is smart. I don't know if they'll just push it to next spring. But what's your guys' take on this game getting delayed again?
Yeah, they could end up having to make that decision of releasing this in October, November, or pushing it until the following spring, and knowing that they're going to get less sales if they release it in the fall of this year. But maybe that's the right decision if the projections are not that different and they need it out now and they can't let it sit any longer. But yeah, this does put them in a bit of a spot. I think right now their best case is if they were able to get it out this summer, in a June or August kind of area. But yeah, I'm not really too surprised either. It's kind of a bummer, but this year is just so jam-packed with so many other games I want to play that I'm not super distraught over having to wait for this. So
yeah, Logan, did you play the first South Park game?
I did. I played it. I borrowed it from a friend, actually. It was one of those games that I didn't know if I wanted to drop $60 on, just because I'm not a huge South Park guy, but I know enough to appreciate the games and things like that. Honestly, I think that everybody's today with this story about it getting delayed has been a little bit too much like the sky is falling, because it was delayed. Technically, it didn't have a release date really anyway, and I think anybody with a brain knew it wasn't going to come out next month, because we all know how March is shaping up to be this year. So exactly. The game was never coming out next month. So for everybody to write up pieces today saying it's delayed again, okay, technically yes, but really no. I think this is a perfect summer game, honestly, and I'm really hoping it comes out in summer. Because like you said, there is so many of the more AAA Call of Duties and the Assassin's Creeds, and we know Red Dead's lurking in the latter half of this year as well. Like, those games that everybody's going to flock to are the ones that people purchase in the fall, and I feel like this might get buried. So I think it is a summer game. Like, I think that's when I think they'll announce a release date soon. I honestly do. They just had to do this whole because it was investors call today, right? And that's where this came out. So I mean, they had to do that. So I think a release date is coming soon. I don't think it's in development hell like the first one was, because obviously they thought they could have got it out originally last year, and they're probably just polishing a few things up at this point. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's in development hell though, because they continue to talk about it even though we haven't heard about it in a long time. But I don't know. It wouldn't have made sense for it to come out within these first couple months anyway, just because everything is so busy in the first part of this year, which is really rare for a year. So.
And you think about how Ubisoft's like whole year is shaping up. They have For Honor coming out, and then they have Ghost Recon Wildlands. So it's like they don't want to double up, right? Wildlands and For Honor are spaced out pretty good. They're not the same type of games, neither is South Park, but it's still your portfolio you're working with. And if they're able to get For Honor come out, sell really well, Wildlands come out, sell really well, and then South Park, like you think, which is a reasonable expectation for it to come out in that summer slot, either before or after E3, would be a nice pacing for the year, right? And kind of disperse their profits pretty evenly. So it's interesting. Do you have any thoughts on this, Jordan, about the delay?
Just that I think it'll be out this summer. I think that's perfect timing for it, because otherwise I think it'd be way too late if it was next year. Yeah,
agreed. So the last news story we have here comes by way of Jason Schreier. This news story isn't too surprising. During an earnings call, Activision basically said Destiny 2 is coming this year. We've kind of all speculated it. A lot of people actually assumed it was coming out last year. And they're like, no, Destiny 2 is coming out this year. That's not the surprising thing. I don't think that's really surprising to anybody. The more surprising thing in Jason Schreier's article is he states, let me pull it up here. Although some of the folks behind Destiny 2 might crave more time to add content and beef up the game, here's an interesting bit of news to consider. If Bungie misses this year of Destiny 2, Activision is awarded a hefty chunk of the independent studio stock, according to sources familiar with the goings-on at Bungie. Bungie's employee stock vesting schedule is also based on game releases, include Destiny 2, which gives them major incentives to get the sequel out this year. So this is really interesting. You heard it straightforward. If the game doesn't come out this year, Activision is getting a hefty portion of Bungie's stock, which is really interesting. He also goes on in the article to state that Activision has given Bungie an extra year, that they wanted Destiny 2 to hit last year in 2016, and they've given them an extra year. So it's there's a two-end fold to this kind of argument of, you don't want a developer to feel urged or pushed to finish a game quickly, because then how does a product come out, right? but you also you don't know the goings on there. You don't know if maybe the game's been kind of in a very polished state for a while, but they wanted to beef up the content in the game because that was a huge glaring problem with the first Destiny. What do you guys think about this? Do you think that Destiny 2 is better off with this kind of deadline that they have to hit? Do you think they're worse off? Like, how does this shape out for the game?
To me, it feels like it's about time either way. And so, like you said, it seems like they were thinking it might have even come out last year. So I think that Bungie's probably not too worried. I mean, Bungie's used to getting games out on time, on a pretty quick turnaround. So I think it'll come out this year, and I think it'll do really well because you don't have the issue of, oh yeah, it's Bungie, but the game's kind of bland and doesn't have a lot of content. I think they've shown this time around, we've had a couple years with the original Destiny, so I think they've shown that they can build that content out and make it a worthwhile game. So clearly I don't need to convince anybody that Destiny's popular, but yeah, I think it's going to do really well this fall.
Yeah, Logan, what do you think about this news?
You can go ahead and jump in, Dom, if you'd like. I knew you were about to say something. No, I can't speak to Destiny 2 too much anyway. I'm not a huge Destiny guy, so I don't have a whole lot to say. I think it's interesting, the whole, like, we get stock in your company if you don't have it out. That sounds insane. I'm wondering if that's like a normal thing companies do when they sign contracts with one another to work on these games together. But other than that, yeah, I mean, it'll be out this year. I have no doubts.
Dom, what were you going to say?
This is one of those weird details that it's odd that the public finds out, about some of these terms in this contract. But I think it makes perfect sense because, I mean, think about from Activision's point of view, that Bungie would be a company they'd love to actually own or partially own and so on. But since they're not, they don't. But because they're not, like a first party studio, it's not like Sony and Naughty Dog where, Naughty Dog can take as long as they damn well want to make a game and Sony's going to be cool with it. There's, probably real strict contracts written out in some of these partnerships that aren't, wholly owned studios by the publisher. So, I mean, while it makes sense, it does sound a little weird and shady that they're kind of, threatening to take ownership of some of the stock, but it makes sense. But in any case, I'm with Jordan. I think this Destiny 2 comes out this year anyway. I don't think they'll have a problem making that deadline.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like, I don't know. It's like you said, it's weird that we get info on this like back end stuff that we would really never know, but somehow it leaks and we know about this. And then to Logan's point, like, how often does this actually happen? To where it does make relationships really weird if
look at Scalebound.
Yeah, if the dev doesn't agree to those kind of things. It's really weird. It's really interesting. At the very least, I think Destiny 2 will be a good game. I don't know if it'll be a great game, but I know, Bungie's a good development studio, and the game was solid from a gameplay mechanic standpoint. It just lacked a lot of content and story. So we'll see how that shapes up. And it had a long tail on it. People still love Destiny to this day, so they know what they're doing and they know how to turn a buck. So we'll see what happens there.
Well, I think Jason Schreier even said in like a follow-up tweet to his article earlier that he gets more tweets about Destiny 2 than any other game in the industry right now. And if that's indicative of anything, that's only one guy getting tweets sent to him, and everybody mostly knows that he's a Destiny player too. So maybe that's a little bit skewed, but if that means anything, then the game's going to blow up and sell incredibly well later this year.
Yeah, agreed. I think we all know it'll definitely be in the top 10 at the end of the year, probably top 5, like maybe even top 3. It will sell. That's not a problem. Whether or not it hits this year, hopefully for Bungie's sake and the people who own stock in it, hopefully it does.